welcome on in to Patrick Party Pregame this Saturday morning in September for the first time ever. It's the Deep South's oldest rivalry in the month of September. It's the final day. The 30th of September, but it's weird. I'm not going to lie. It's weird playing this game so early, but, it's still Auburn, Georgia week. It's still Auburn, Georgia, Deep South's oldest rivalry game day, and it's always a special one, always a special show. So thanks for joining us. Welcome into Patrick Party Pregame. For those I haven't had the opportunity to meet, I am Patrick Bingham. And, man, we got a really fun show lined up today. Going to look back at some fun old Auburn, Georgia games, blast from the past. And, of course, we are going to go through not as good of a slate as last week. Last week lived up to the hype, but we're going to go through some of the fun games. And then, of course, we're going to break down this 128th edition of the Deep South's oldest rivalry between Auburn and Georgia, taking place in Georgia and Auburn Stadium right behind me. We're going to go through the rivalry, just kind of where we see Auburn. Of course, they're trying to bounce back from that loss against Texas A&M in College Station. I had the privilege to be there and to cover the game, and will again have that opportunity in Georgia and Auburn Stadium. So I'll be up in the press box for this one. It should be a fun game. A lot of fun access, so we'll plug all of that at the end. But as we like to do in the third minute of our show, we are going to highlight the 83, 93, and 13 championship seasons for Auburn. And, of course, I know, the Georgia game back then was in its rightful place, which is the second weekend of November. But we are going to kind of get weird, jump ahead in the calendar a little bit, just for Georgia, and then we'll kind of get back on track with how we've been going through the season. So let's go ahead. Let's start with that 1983 game against the number 3 Auburn Tigers and number 4 Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia entering this game. Auburn had beaten Georgia in 1979. Georgia had not lost an SEC game until this 83 game. Auburn ends up winning 13-7, gets an early touchdown in the first quarter, 2 field goals in the second quarter, and Auburn wins the SEC championship 13-7, clinches it that day in Sanford Stadium. Really a big turning of the tide moment for Coach Pat Dice. He got the program rolling in the 80s. In the 93 game, number 7 Auburn took on Georgia in Athens. Georgia was actually favored by some in this game. This and the 83 game were part of a stretch where Auburn won 8 out of 11 against Georgia. In 9 out of 10 games in Athens, Auburn was able to score early and keep it going. Auburn gets a big win, 42-28, gets Auburn to 10-0 and sets up a big-time Iron Bowl for Auburn. And in 2013, number 7 Auburn takes on number 25 Georgia. Auburn roars off to a big lead in this one. Georgia starts sneaking back up, though. Scores a late touchdown to take a 38-37 lead. I still don't think Aaron Murray was in, but then Nick Marshall on 4th and 18 throws a home run ball. It's tipped up by Georgia defenders, and Ricardo Lewis comes up under it, getting the game-winning touchdown for the Tigers. Georgia, though, had a chance to go down and score at the end, but Aaron Murray met D Ford to close out the ball game. He was hit as he throws, and the Tigers won to set up a big-time Iron Bowl coming up in just 2 weeks. So what a fun couple of football games. And we got to do highlights, so that's always exciting, and our new highlight music. Let's go ahead and get into, we got to enjoy the past. Let's get into this Saturday slate here on Patrick Party Pregame. We start with the game in Boulder. Feels like we're talking about the game in Boulder, or revolving around this program every single week. Of course, the Deion train definitely slowed down. I don't want to say it got off the tracks, but it hit something when it ran into Dan Lanning and the Oregon. If you haven't seen, the Oregon produced a recap video of the game. It was really well done, but and definitely like a propaganda video for Oregon. But it was very, very interesting and telling. Oregon just they out physicaled them, and I think it shows. And I had been saying this, Deion for how bad the Colorado program had been, Deion deserved plenty of credit for getting them to 3 wins already, winning their first 3. They only won 1 game last year, all the roster turnover and everything like that. But when it comes to competing with the big boys, they're just not there yet as a program. And we might be saying the same thing about Auburn in a couple hours, but they're just not there yet. And I don't think that's really disrespectful. I just honestly think that I just think that's the truth. And I think in this one, they ran into Oregon. They get to play USC. I mean, that could be your Pac-12 championship right there. Remember, there are no divisions this year in the Pac-12 its final season. The Pac-12 is the best conference in football by far. I will say in this one, USC, this game I think could be more interesting than that Oregon game. USC doesn't have a defense. Oregon did. So I think Colorado will be able to score. I think Colorado is also going to give up 100 points too. I think Caleb Williams, Lincoln Riley, and that bunch are going to go nuts. And this one, I'm not picking this game, so I'll go ahead and pick it now. I like number 8, USC, pretty big in that one at 11 o'clock on Fox. Also at 11 o'clock on ESPN following College Game Day. The Florida Gators travel to take undefeated Kentucky in Lexington. This has been a fun little, I don't know if we want to call it a rivalry, but, Florida won all those straight. Kentucky has actually won 3 out of the last 5. And I'm certainly interested. This is a game to see. I don't really think, there's Tennessee. But I don't really – of Tennessee, Kentucky, and Florida, that kind of seems like the next tier under Georgia. I don't know with Missouri yet. I'm drinking the Missouri Kool-Aid, but it's also like Missouri. Sorry, the one person I know that went there. This is a really big game for the East. Kentucky has not been tested. They have played 3 pretty weak opponents. Florida has gone out to Utah. They've played – they beat Tennessee at home, and I just kind of feel like Florida might know more about themselves than Kentucky knows about themselves. I think that could be potentially a big advantage for Billy Napier's team. We're going to see what Graham Mertz and how he does in this one. This is a fascinating football game, one I don't really want to pick, but we'll pick in a little bit. Also coming up, the Southwest Classic. Oh, that's what it's called. I called it the special in the pick'em. Texas A&M, Arkansas, and Jerry World, AT&T Stadium. I would imagine we all watched the A&M game last weekend. They get a big conference opening win against Auburn. Jimbo Fisher got in the game. I mean, it was a pretty good day in Aggie land. And I will say, I will take some of this time to just talk about my experience there. The press box is at the tip top. It was a really good view. But when I went out, if you saw, I filmed my picks last week on the staircase next to it, and I don't know how comfortable I felt standing on that staircase. Highlights from College Station, by far the nicest stadium in the SEC, that's been said. I really didn't interact with any of their fans. It was very hot. Got to walk, I was on field side for pregame, and I got to walk by the cannon. That was really interesting. You forget how close a lot of the stands are in other SEC stadiums, to the field. Like Auburn's, there's the sideline, then there's the fence and the bushes, and then there's some more grass, and then there's some more bushes, and then there's the actual start of the stadium. It's a little bit more on top of you there. I will say the press box, I am not one for breakfast burritos. They had breakfast tacos, and it was really well done. So shout out to Texas A&M for making me like breakfast tacos. For the football, A&M, it kind of felt like once they got a pretty good lead on Auburn, they were just kind of more managing the game. They weren't trying to go crazy with Max Johnson. Now that Arkansas has had a full week to game plan for them, I'm interested to see how it goes. Arkansas played really close with LSU last Saturday. I was watching on the plane ride back to Auburn, and I don't know how I feel about Sam Pittman. At this point, and I'm not ready to say, honestly, I don't know if we really might have an SEC where there aren't any new coaches, including the 2 programs that come in, right? of teams you would have said, oh, maybe coming in the season, oh, maybe let's watch their coach. It was like Florida, Billy Napier, maybe, but honestly, no, and they really shouldn't. Eli Drinkwitz got mentioned, but like Missouri's having a good start. Sam Pittman might be the one that's closest to it, and even him, I don't like feel that confident that like something's gonna happen. But like maybe, I don't think Oklahoma's getting rid of. It looks like things are starting to go well up in Norman. So this is maybe if they keep losing, but I don't know. It's just it feels like a lot of the flash and the excitement and like the whole feel good story has really started to dwindle down. We'll see what they're able to. They lost both their coordinators. We'll see what they'll be able to do against Texas A&M. I will make this pick, so we'll talk about it later. Clemson, Syracuse. Was reading through the game notes of this one, and so many records like on the line in this. Clemson hasn't lost back-to-back consecutive games since November of 2011. Really just speaks to the run Dabo Swinney and this program have gone on. A lot of ones in this one. Dabo Swinney could get his 100th win, only in ACC regular season play. Only other ACC coach to do that is Bobby Bowden. Just several random stats, but Syracuse, they have a really good offense and defense. They're one of two teams, the other being Oklahoma, that is in the currently in the top 7 nationally in scoring offense and scoring defense, meaning their defense doesn't let you score, their offense obviously is. They haven't really played anyone yet, so this is their first big test. I know Clemson's coming off that emotional loss to Florida State, so I will be interested to see where we go from there. This one will be in the Carrier Dome. We know they played weird games before, so I don't want to say upset. Well, truthfully, this is the first time also Clemson's ever played Syracuse not ranked, so that's also interesting as well. This is my sexy game of the week. Virginia, Boston College. Virginia has not won yet. Boston College has their win against Holy Cross. I don't know who's going to win this game because both teams are just very, very, very bad. I don't want to go head coach watch on, all the stuff we all know that's happened with Virginia. I will say for Boston College, yes, very much so. So I'm really interested to see in this game loser of this game is probably the worst Power 5 team, truthfully. So it's my sexy game of the week because it's so bad. It's on the CW network, whatever in the world that is, like in between a bunch of games. No one is going to watch this, which is why we're going to talk about it for a second. A top 25 matchup in Austin. That's number 24 Kansas, number 3 Texas. I said this in the picks, and I'll just say it here too. Kansas looks good. They looked real good against BYU last Friday night. Texas looks national championship potential good, so I think that just kind of states it there. I think this could be a fun game. Of course, we all know Lance Leipold, the Kansas coach, is going to have his name mentioned for jobs. He has last year. This is just the nature of being at Kansas. I know they're building up that program. They're about to spend a lot of money for that stadium. So a lot of investments coming to Kansas. We'll just kind of see where that goes. Big game, though, in Austin. One that I think the longer Kansas stays in this, maybe the more interesting it might get. Another Big 12 game. This one is interesting, and it's not interesting for any national narrative at all. Texas Tech already has a couple losses. Houston, and their coach, very much so on head coaching watch, potentially for the Cougars. They lost to Rice. They just, for a year where you want to get into the Big 12 and start strong, that is not what they're doing. Texas Tech, man, I felt like this was a summer. It was a summer for, national championship. Maybe they make the playoff, hype. Florida State, Penn State. I would say for just a summer of, team on the rise, I really felt like, and, team to watch, and to maybe pick and maybe look smart if they end up having a decent season, was Texas Tech. I did that and have been wrong. They lost in Laramie. They've lost to Oregon. Texas Tech has struggled out of the gate. And I just felt like there was a lot of hype around Joey McGuire. A lot of people have liked what he's been doing, all the Texas inroads. And I don't at all want to say I believe in his second year. He's not on head coaching watch. We're not doing that. But if he was, Baylor needs to hire him immediately. But this is just Texas Tech should win this game. It's at home in Lubbock, but I don't know. This could be interesting. It's on FS2. I didn't even know that was a channel, so probably aren't watching that one. On FS1, a channel I know most people get, Baylor UCF. UCF's first home Big 12 game. This is a rematch of the 2013 seasons. I don't know if it was in 13 or 14, the game, but it was the 2013 seasons Fiesta Bowl. UCF won that game. It was a shootout. And this is the big moment for Gus Malzahn. They could win this game. Baylor has not looked good, and they've had 4 straight weeks at McLean Stadium, which I drove by. Very pretty stadium on our way to College Station. Baylor has not looked good. It has been a rough start for the Bears, and you just start to wonder, like, the only real success that Dave Aranda's had, which it was a weird hire, right, was kind of it was initially, they went to the Sugar Bowl, and they won. They beat Ole Miss, but it was with Matt Rule's guys, and so I don't know. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. They could be a team where I'm like, we'll see where this one goes. And I mean, like, their defense has not looked good. I know Ron Roberts came from there, and it's not like they've gotten better. And so I'm just kind of like, how much of that was Ron Roberts versus maybe they're not doing well recruiting? Like, it's just Baylor, an interesting case to watch. Let's talk about Memphis and Boise State. I know we're doing a lot of weird games this week. That was also something I did. And I really, because I can't, like, not put some of the big national games on our pick'em. Also, don't leave our show, but at the end, we have a pick'em. And we've gotten more people to do it, but I want to make this a thing. So on our email newsletter that got sent out on Friday, sorry, I know it was a little bit later. I just want to say, participate in the pick'em. We'll shout you out if you win. It's only 10 games. It's on our website, patrickparty.com. I think /pick'em, literally. But you can find it just on our website. If you click where it says Week 5 Pick'em in our email newsletter, you can participate there. It closes at 11, though. It's smart. You can't watch any games or pick the game. This is the tough one. Boise State has not looked too great. They really just kind of like squeaked it out against San Diego State. Did not look that impressive. That's a San Diego State team with Brady Hoke, where it's just like, this is really like getting boring, and like there's just no appeal at all. It's just kind of how it goes when Brady Hoke, I guess, is your coach. We all saw it at Michigan and some other places. They just like have not looked that exciting, and in a year where it really felt like last year they kind of caught their stride towards the end of the season. It's like, okay, they got momentum. Could we get back to more of like, when you think of Boise, this is what Boise is. They're winning the Mountain West, and I don't even know if they're the best team in the Mountain West. I mean, Air Force and Wyoming are probably my 2 teams that I'd be watching for in the Mountain West. Memphis, on the other hand, we were on head coaching watch with Memphis for a second. Ryan Satterfield, I believe is his name, and here's the thing with Memphis. They looked pretty good against Missouri. They had won their first 3. This is a big game at home in the Liberty Bowl. The winner of this game is looking real good, especially if it's Memphis going into conference play. Boise State, they need this one to kind of get things going again before they get into Mountain West play. This is a big G5 game that I'll be paying attention to. I'll probably out literally in the middle of the Auburn game. LSU, Ole Miss, it's the Magnolia Bowl. They only just started playing for a Magnolia Bowl trophy about 15 years ago, which I thought was interesting. Look, can Ole Miss bounce back from a loss in Tuscaloosa? So much hype, so much like all extra stuff in the press conference and everything else, but you know, can you win a big home game? If LSU's looking like the team that should win the West. I know they flirted around with Arkansas, but I still think they have. I think they're the best team, truthfully, in a down year, really, for most of the SEC, especially the West, which is weird to say in its final season. But I think this game could go a long way in determining how the West was won. And in this one, I don't know. This is a really interesting game to watch. The Magnolia Bowl. This is one I would keep your eye on, especially. It starts at 5, which is not normal. ESPN has their doubleheader, Alabama, Mississippi State, which we aren't talking about here on the slate, but that is after this game. So, if that Auburn game gets ugly, just flip it to this. A game I know none of y'all are going to watch. We have a lot of weird games on the slate this week, but it's just truthfully because I'm excited. We're really going to learn a lot about some of these G5 teams I know you probably don't care about. But Georgia State is a team that we came out of nowhere for me, truthfully. A team that they're 4-0, and they keep getting pretty big wins. And could they go on a run in the Sun Belt? We'll see. Now, Troy really could have won that game against James Madison, and they've been just kind of not looking as good as they were last year. This is a big moment for Georgia State at home, Turner Field. I don't know what it's called now, but it is Turner Field. This is a big moment where you can say, okay, Georgia State, you've had a good start, but, is a bowl – I mean, they're 4-0. Bowl game is for sure, in the realm of possibilities. But, okay, Georgia State, is this a moment where we could sit here and be like, all right, you could win the Sun Belt? And, I mean, we've been talking about, they're in Atlanta. There should be a good amount of talent. There's no reason Georgia State shouldn't be good, and maybe they finally are. We'll see. The marquee game, probably the game of the weekend, that's Notre Dame and Duke. Notre Dame coming off that loss, so they only had 10 guys on the field those final 2 plays. And I remember watching that, and the way the screen – was, or if you're standing where Ohio State's quarterback was, that left side of the defensive line, where are the players? What? And they ran it right there, and they scored. And I wonder there's weird coaching things. And then they made the whole comment that they didn't want to take a penalty by subbing a player on. Which doesn't make any sense because you get some kind of the downs don't matter. There was several seconds left. So there was only enough time for so many more plays. So it doesn't matter if it goes back to first down. They're getting 2 more plays regardless. And then on top of that, if they move the ball, it's half of the distance to the goal line. So we're moving it 2 inches. What difference does that make? You would rather have the players more important than the 3 inches. It was so bizarre to me. Really all around, I don't understand. This is going to be a big game for Duke. Mike Elko, we've talked about. He's going to be talked about for several head coaching positions, and we'll see. This is the big moment for Duke, and I don't think any of us really believe that they could repeat having a good season. This could be a huge moment for them if they could beat Notre Dame at home. It's going to be a fun atmosphere. College game day will be there. It's the Saturday night football game on ABC, zippity-doo-dah. South Carolina, Tennessee, we all know what happened last year. Tennessee wore those ugly orange helmets, and they got beat in Williams-Brice when, South Carolina did the whole Beamer Ball thing. It all got exciting, and they blew them out. That was after the Auburn-Western Kentucky game, and I turned on the TV when I got back, and I was like, oh my word. Look, for Tennessee, we got to see if this, I don't think anyone knows what to think about them, especially after that Florida game, because they've looked good at points, and at other points you're just kind of what? This is a game. This is a take care business. They need to win game. It's a blackout game. They're wearing their black, which is just arguably as ugly as their orange helmets. And we'll see how it goes. Another game where we're just kind of this is not what we thought was going to happen. West Virginia, 3-1, only lost to Penn State. They've won 3 straight. They've won the backyard brawl. This is a big game against a TCU team. They beat SMU pretty good last week in Dallas. It was in Fort Worth. It was a home game. And this is a game where we can see which one of these teams might actually be in the upper half of this Big 12 conference. And if it's West Virginia, I would be it's on the road, I know. But, this could be a big moment for Neil Brown. It kind of already feels like he might have saved his job. But if he starts winning some of these Big 12 games, none of us saw that coming. That could just that would be really, really huge for them. And then our game of the weekend, it's the 128th Deep South's oldest rivalry. That's Auburn and number 1 back-to-back defending national champion Georgia Bulldogs in Jordan-Hare Stadium right behind me. Kickoff at 2:30 for the final time, the SEC on CBS. Feels like a tradition at this point, so maybe a little bit sad to see it go. Just gonna break down. We're gonna get into our second half of the program where we just kind of break down on a more extensive note this matchup, and let's go ahead and start with talking about the Dogs. I think it's a fair thing to be like, how many of us have really watched much of Georgia this season? And I know people want to play the whole cupcake schedule game and make fun of them, and I think some of that's warranted. Also, they had Oklahoma on the schedule, and the SEC told them they couldn't play it, so you can go back and forth there. I will say for this one, yeah, I think we were all surprised, truthfully, especially after that game in College Station, that the line was only in the 2 touchdown range, because we watched the game on Saturday for Auburn, and I think the thing here is that it's Carson Beck's first true road game. I don't want to say this. Georgia beat South Carolina. That was a test. Of course, South Carolina had the lead at halftime. Georgia kind of just goes murder ball and beats them in the second half. But this is the atmosphere. The longer Auburn lingers in this one, it could be difficult. Just with everything. But again, it's I think we were all just truthfully surprised. I will just say, talking about Georgia and their offense, I think it's been a pretty decent start to the season. They've had a bunch of running backs out, and that hasn't helped first-year starter Carson Beck. They've had a bunch of running backs out for injury, which is obviously less than ideal. And, their offense, I think the biggest, most surprising thing was UAB scored. I think a lot of people thought that Trent Dilford and UAB were not going to score against Georgia, and they scored 21 points. So I think it's just a Georgia team where they've eased into the season, but also look at their schedule. They can afford that, and it's gonna I think it's an offense that's still trying to find itself. Mike Bobo, their offensive coordinator, but at the same time, it's Georgia's defense. I think we all feel pretty good about what Kirby Smart and Georgia are going to do on that side of the ball. And I'll just say, I think it's one of those things where, if Georgia can make a big offensive statement and get up early, it could get ugly. But, the longer Auburn lingers in this game and in this first half and maybe into the third quarter, I don't want to go as far as to say that I think Auburn could win, but it could certainly keep it an interesting game. Let's talk about Auburn. Just truthfully, I just have a lot more to say. Looking back on last Saturday, it's one of those things where I have several takeaways, but sitting up in the press box, it just kept, from the very beginning, it felt like Auburn was just walking on thin ice, and they were one big thing away from the dam kind of breaking and losing that game, right? It never really, from the very beginning, just Auburn goes 3 and out. A&M, the defense just kind of kept, limiting them. It was one of those, how many times do we have to say, and I've said this at several points in this season. I said it in the Cal game. How many times can Auburn afford almost to say, well, it could be worse. This is the best case scenario of the bad things that have happened. And, that's ideal, but it's at some point you're going to go up against some good competition. Auburn's playing the number 1 team on Saturday. And, you just kind of wonder what's going on. So I think the big thing, my big takeaway from A&M is there were several opportunities. And I don't want to go as far as to say Auburn could have won the game if X, Y, and Z happened. But there are several points where Auburn had an opportunity when they were getting in field goal range and they took a big sack. Or, you had the Damari got injured. We'll talk about him in a second. He gets injured, but they call back that whole touchdown play, and Auburn doesn't, nothing comes away from it. It's just the momentum, Auburn was just never able to, seize that or score a touchdown. And, I talked with Hugh Freeze, and, he just said in his opening he said in his opening statement, and then I asked him about the quarterbacks first with the first question, and he was like, look, we're searching on offense. And I don't know if Auburn fans are necessarily used to coaches just being that up front, but he's not wrong. You're watching The second I was watching the second half, and the second they started putting Robbie in and Holden in and Peyton back in for long, it was like they're just trying to find something. It's a lot like that Cal game. It almost feels like there's no rhythm to the play calls, or there's no rhythm to this offense because there is none. They're just trying to find a spark again. And I think the second Auburn gets into that situation against Georgia, game over. I'll immediately start writing the Auburn loss story. But I just, at some point, I feel like when let's look at the offense. I asked Freeze about the quarterbacks, and he said, look, I haven't watched the film yet, which is real. He hadn't watched the film yet. That's not neglecting the answer. That is a correct thing to say. And he was like, look, we can't play like that again. And so I think a lot of people, just talking with some other people at the game, it's like, are they going to go with Robbie? Does that make more sense? Or I know we all don't really believe in Robbie as a passer, but I mean, as a runner, and especially if the offensive line is going to continue to struggle, just that's something that really reared its ugly head. Is that going to make sense, or does Auburn really just say, we're going to build and we're going to put Holden in and we're just going to make it work? We'll start with Holden. I don't think that makes sense. I don't think you put a guy that really has not a lot of game experience, not a lot of practice experience in against the number one team, and then go to Baton Rouge in 2 weeks and say, all right, let's build some confidence against these teams. That's a bad idea. That's how you destroy confidence. But it's also one of those, we were talking, are they just going to put Peyton in against Georgia and just let him go die and then pick someone out? I don't really know. I think there's going to be a lot, depending on how this Auburn-Georgia game goes, I think will ultimately determine how much they have to do kind of soul-searching, and really do we have to make some drastic changes during the bye week heading into Baton Rouge. And how good or poorly this game goes against Georgia could really determine, when we're in Baton Rouge in 2 weeks, how that looks and how different of a team this looks. Because, truthfully, I was telling someone heading into this College Station game, I was like, what I'm most excited about is seeing what this offense is and seeing what the identity is. Because we didn't get that against Cal because everything was so discombobulated. And it was again. The word I kept going back to I was like, discombobulated. That's the word that keeps coming to me, because Auburn's searching. They don't even know what their identity is. And, truthfully, I was like, that's what I was excited about for this game. And, College Station was, I'm excited to see the identity of this team. And maybe the identity is discombobulation on the offensive side. And, at some point when you start to struggle like that against Power 5 teams, it becomes your identity at some point. We've referenced the really lovely stat that was floating around on Twitter. Auburn's been under 100 yards passing in the last 5 games dating back to last season. Granted, a couple of those were Cadillac was the coach, and it was very much more a run ball. But in this RPO style, Freeze said in the press conference on Monday, he was like, look, we didn't run a single RPO, and we're going to have to change that and maybe try and fix some other things. Just also talking about the offense, the Damari Alston, he was playing really well, and it just really unfortunate that he went down in this one. Dislocated shoulder. It's just going to take a lot of time, truthfully. Sometimes those things heal on your own. Sometimes you got to have surgery. But they're really, I think, going to start to lean. I think Jeremiah Cobb's role, I think Petit kind of has a specialized role in this offense, kind of being the smaller. He gives Corey Grant vibes, big Corey Grant vibes, right? But I think it's going to be Hunter, and Jeremiah Cobb's going to have to step up and as a true freshman. And, Jarquez was able to do that in 21. Can Cobb do that behind him, Jarquez now as the lead guy? And I think that's going to be a big thing. And this one, another just a shocking stat, really, was, and we've talked about how much this offense struggled against Texas A&M, especially through the air. But Jay Fair, a guy we were like, he's got to be more present in the offense. Freeze has said this. He was like 5 and 6, got to be more present, and he only had 1 reception the whole game. No, he had a couple but he only had 1 reception the whole game. Only a couple targets. Of course, that big touchdown pass that Thorne missed in the second quarter. But just kind of looking ahead, looking against Georgia, I would imagine Georgia is really going to try and send pressure against this Auburn offensive line. And A&M was able to do that. They were able to get home. We've talked about the sacks with Peyton Thorne. And I'll say this. I would think early, something to watch for, what is Auburn trying to do out of the gate? I think Auburn might try to go through the air early, because I don't think Georgia really respects Auburn through the air, and I think they're really just going to kind of zone in on, if we can stop the run, we stop Auburn. If Auburn can get some completions going through the air, I think they could keep this going. I think this could get interesting, and it could open up the running game and make the Georgia defense be honest. If that doesn't happen, Auburn fails to do that, again, this could get ugly. You might not see Auburn score in this one. I will say Auburn has not been shut out since that 2012 Iron Bowl. It's a pretty long streak, but I guess I don't have that on my iPad. My bad. I will say, and here is where I think we get the danger zone for the offense. We talked about the offensive line a lot, and we hyped them up. We're like, look at all the people Freeze has brought in, and I think that's something that we all did because, the last two guys really, for the longest time, had really struggled to bring in offensive linemen, just like any of them, like just bodies, right? And so a lot of what Freeze did and a lot of the guys playing outside of Dylan Wade are guys that probably wouldn't be playing on other SEC offensive lines. And so what's so interesting in this one for me is if Georgia can get home and can get pressure on the quarterback, whether that's Thorne or Ashford or whomever, with only sending 4 guys and without having to blitz, right? They can stop the run with only 4 guys, because then they can sit back and still guard the pass game, and Auburn's kind of screwed. A lot is going to come down this offensive line, and a lot's going to come down, can Thorne, be more confident in the pocket, not let things get to him. He really struggled with that later, taking a lot of sacks against Texas A&M, and Freeze talked about that. That's our goal, is confidence in the pocket. Sounds like Thorne's going to start. Everything Freeze has said. No reason really to believe otherwise. I will say for Ashford, I'm interested to see what kind of role he has in this game if he were to come in at some point. Maybe help with the running game. Maybe Auburn tries to lean on the strength of the running attack. But all signs point to Thorne being the starter, but I truthfully am interested to see what Philip Montgomery and this Auburn offense do. And we'll talk about Philip. Freeze said, look, I'm really struggling not calling the plays. And we'll just see what the game plan is. And I think the big thing is I think Freeze wants to get more RPOs in this game. He wants to get, he wants that Georgia defense guessing, and they have struggled to really even get into a rhythm early. So, it's a tall task to play Georgia in a year one where you're still searching on offense this early in the season. But I think that's going to be certainly something to watch for in this one. I will also say, let's talk about Ron Robertson, this defense, really quick. We've talked about Eugene Asante really being the MVP of this team. I will say for Robert, I think everyone's just assuming Auburn's defense is going to be able to slow down Georgia for a slow period of time. I think that puts some pressure on the defense. If Georgia, as I've said, can get out to a lead early, I think it just takes everything out of the building, right? And I think there's a lot of pressure on the defense of keeping the offense in the game, and they've been doing that until the dam broke against A&M. They did that for the Cal game. How long can this defense keep Auburn in the game before the dam breaks, or can this offense score and keep the defense off the field, not have 3 and outs, and really keep this defense fresh? They're getting, there's been a lot of injuries. They're getting thin, and the secondary, that's certainly been a struggle as well. So going to be it's a fascinating game, not even necessarily for who's going to win or what the point total is going to be, but just for learning about this Auburn team and how can they combat against a big team like this, and can Auburn make progress and improve against literally the gold standard in the sport, as Freeze has called this Georgia program. With that, let's go ahead and get on into Bingham's Bets, everyone's favorite segment. Let's go ahead and get started. Penn State, a 26.5-point favorite at noon against Northwestern. Nittany Lions in the spread. All these are by the spread, by the way. USC, a 21.5-point favorite against Colorado. I'm going to take the Trojans that one. They're going to score a lot of points. A&M, only a 6-point favorite. These games are always weird, but A&M's won the last several in Jerry World. I'd probably take A&M on the spread there. Georgia only a 14-point favorite. I'm just throwing that out there. Very, very interesting. Texas a 16.5-point favorite. That's tough. I'll take the Jayhawks. I'll be fine. I'll take the Jayhawks in that one. Oh, what else? LSU, a 2.5-point favorite on the road in the Magnolia Bowl against Ole Miss. This could be a tough one. I don't know. Oregon's a 27-point favorite against Stanford. Take the Ducks in that one. They're going to win by a lot. Oklahoma, 20-point favorite over Iowa State. I might take the Sooners. I think they're also going to win by a lot. They've been rolling. They got a big Red River showdown coming up in a couple weeks. I think they could be undefeated for that one, so that could be really interesting. Pitt only a 2.5-point favorite against Virginia Tech. Pitt, a tough start, 1-3. Their offense is just abysmal. Virginia Tech, I think, is worse, though. I'd take Pitt in the spread on that one. TCU, a 14-point favorite against West Virginia. Man, I'd take West Virginia in this one. I think this game's going to be pretty close. Alabama, only a 14.5-point favorite against Mississippi State. Mississippi State's offense is not very inspiring. I would take the Tide pretty big in that one. And Fresno State, a 24.5-point favorite over 0-4 Nevada, maybe worst team in FBS. I'd take Fresno State pretty big in that one. Alrighty, announcements time before we get out of here. So if you haven't read it, we'll have our preview, our podcast, everything on our email newsletter that we sent out yesterday on Friday. This pregame, we're about to show you our picks. So that's kind of all of our pregame coverage on the Patrick Party front. Go to my Twitter account. That's Patrick A. Bingham. You can follow me. Please follow me. But also just during the game, you can follow along. I'll be in the press box. I'll be covering the game for the Plainsmen along with some other guys. We'll have a story at the end of the game. And yeah, I'll be on the field pregame, so should have some fun access there as well. And then we'll be talking about stats and stuff kind of throughout this 128th edition of the Deep South Solidus Rivalry. So should have a lot of coverage for you on my various, entities, platforms, whatever. With that being said, let's go ahead and get on into Pat's picks. That's going to do it for our show, everybody. Always fun Auburn, Georgia weekend. I will say special shout out. I know the week's over, but a great book, Deep South Soldiers Rivalry by Doug Stutzman, Family Friends. A wonderful book on the history of this rivalry, especially with all the conference stuff and everything else. This rivalry has so much history. It is so fun to go back and reread and that 83 game is like a classic. There's so many fun things. As Hugh Freeze joked about, he was like, I don't know I'm new here, but I don't know how much hate's in this rivalry. And everyone was like, what? And then, so yeah, there's going to be so much love. We're going to, Auburn is just going to overpower Georgia with all the love in Jordan-Hare Stadium. So love y'all. Thanks for joining us. Let's go ahead and see Pat's picks, everybody. Hey, everybody. Welcome on into the Patrick Party. Let's go ahead and get to Pat's picks. We start at that 11 o'clock hour. Florida going up to Lexington to take on Kentucky. It's a back-and-forth game, but I think Florida's been more battle-tested with games already against Utah and Tennessee. Kentucky hadn't quite had that. I think that's going to help Billy Napier's squad. I like the Gators and that one. Texas A&M, Arkansas, Southwest Special. It's in Dallas. Arkansas just doesn't look too good under Sam Pittman. I know they flirted around with LSU for quite a while, and A&M, Wegman's out for the rest of the season. I do think Johnson's a pretty good quarterback. I'm going to go with Jimbo Fisher and company before they have a big game against Alabama next weekend. Next up at the 2:30 time slot, you have Texas and Kansas. This one will be in Austin. It's a top 25 matchup. Kansas has looked really good, but Texas has looked national championship contending good. I like Steve Sarkisian's offense in that one in Austin. At 5 o'clock, the Magnolia Bowl in Oxford this year. That's Ole Miss, that's LSU. It's another top 25 matchup. Ole Miss coming off that loss against Alabama. Can they regroup? I don't really think so. I like LSU in this one. I still think they're my pick to win the West. At 6:30, the game everyone's been talking about all week, College game days there. It's in Durham. That's Wallace Wade Stadium hosting Duke and Notre Dame. Notre Dame coming off that loss with only 10 players on the field against Ohio State. I'm going to go with the Fighting Irish in this one. Duke has looked great, but I just like Notre Dame's talent in that one. And then the 128th Deep South's oldest rivalry in Jordan Hare Stadium right behind me. Georgia has dominated this series as of late, and Auburn's still in rebuilding mode. Georgia's won the last few national championships. You've reset it. They're the gold standard in college football. And while I think Auburn can hang around and make this game interesting and certainly keep the atmosphere alive, I'm going to go with the Dogs to get the win here in Auburn and keep their undefeated and national championship hopes alive. That's it from the Patrick Party. Enjoy your college football Saturday.